Was BYD's bet on Orbán a wedge driven into the EU for the Chinese Communist Party? Here is Jersey's news commentary channel. Orbán has finally fallen. And with his downfall, another sensitive question has suddenly been pushed to the foreground: what will happen next to those Chinese companies, especially BYD, that spent these past years betting on Orbán and embedding themselves deeply in Hungary? In my view, this is not an ordinary question of corporate judgment, nor is it a routine business story about building factories overseas or global expansion. On the surface, BYD's bet on Orbán looks like investment. But underneath, it is a gamble in which politics, industry, and geopolitics are tightly intertwined. Let us first look at the facts. During the Orbán era, Hungary became one of the most important bridgeheads for Chinese capital entering Europe. Official Hungarian data show that Chinese investment in Hungary exceeded €7.6 billion in 2023, and reached €5.2 billion in 2024, accounting for more than half of all inbound investment. Research institutions have also pointed out that in 2023 alone, Hungary absorbed 44% of all Chinese FDI into Europe. This is no longer simply a matter of active foreign investment. It is a targeted breakthrough by Chinese new energy capital into the heart of Europe. Consider this: in 2025, Hungary's population was only about 9.6 million, roughly comparable to just one Chinese city such as Nantong, Suzhou, or the urban plus surrounding area of Shijiazhuang. Hungary's GDP was only a little over $240 billion, about 1.7 trillion yuan, roughly on par with the economic scale of Ningbo, Qingdao, or Wuxi in China. BYD is the most striking fist in this breakthrough. It is building its first European passenger car factory in Szeged, Hungary, with an investment of about €4 billion, an initial capacity of 150,000 vehicles, and an eventual target of 300,000 vehicles. It has also placed its European headquarters and R&D center in Budapest, moving in a full set of functions including sales, certification, testing, and localized design. At the same time, CATL has poured €7.34 billion into Debrecen to build a 100 GWh battery megafactory, while Semcorp has inserted a separator plant into the chain. In other words, China is not merely trying to sell a few cars. It is trying to nail an entire new energy industrial chain, as an integrated system, into the interior of the EU. Is this a commercially rational choice? Of course, there is commercial rationality here. Profit-seeking is basic common sense for any company. But the problem is that this was never just about business. Why did all of this happen specifically in Hungary? Because Orbán not only welcomed Chinese capital, but was also willing to speak for Beijing within the EU and shield Beijing from European pushback. When the EU imposed anti-subsidy tariffs on Chinese EVs in 2024, the Hungarian government openly denounced the move as a brutal punishment of Chinese automakers. In the EU vote, Hungary also stood with the opposition camp. In the end, the EU still raised additional tariffs on Chinese-made EVs to as high as 45.3%. And one core reason why BYD rushed to place its factory in Hungary was precisely to evade those tariffs, to transform Made in China into Made in Europe, draped in a European outer shell. So BYD's bet on Orbán was never simply about building a factory in a lower-cost country. What it was betting on was a political figure, a political environment, and a special ally capable of opening a breach for the CCP from inside the EU. To put it bluntly, what BYD was betting on was this: that the CCP could manage Orbán, that Orbán could hold back the EU, and that Hungary could become the springboard through which China's new energy industry could land in Europe. There is certainly short-sightedness in this bet. Its short-sightedness lies in its excessive faith in political protection, in imagining that a strongman politician could shield it from the storms for the long term. Its short-sightedness lies in misjudging European politics, misjudging Hungarian public opinion, and misjudging the EU's determination to keep tightening its defenses. But if we describe this only as political short-sightedness, that is still not enough. There is something deeper here: collusion with evil. Orbán is not an ordinary conservative politician. For years he operated along two tracks, domestic and foreign. At home he eroded the rule of law, controlled the media, and distorted public resources. Abroad he obstructed the EU, leaned toward Russia, and acted as a troublemaker inside Europe. A political figure like that is naturally valuable to the CCP. What Beijing needs is not an abstract trading partner. What it needs is a node inside the EU that can sabotage, delay, dilute, and fracture Europe's common will. Research by the Atlantic Council has even stated bluntly that under Orbán, Hungary effectively became the role inside the EU closest to being Beijing's spokesman. Seen in this light, BYD's expansion into Europe should not be regarded as a purely corporate act. It looks more like an industrialized outer shell for the CCP's external expansion. A car factory may still appear to be just a car factory on the surface, but behind it stand massive CCP subsidies, loose credit, policy mobilization, diplomatic backing, geopolitical calculation, and a state strategy of pushing both excess capacity and political influence into the EU at the same time. Especially after the escalation of US-China tensions, Europe has become the major market Beijing most wants both to hold on to and to break into. New energy vehicles are not only about exports, jobs, and capacity release. They are also about whether Xi Jinping's political narrative the East is rising and the West is declining, together with new quality productive forces can continue to be packaged and sold. If Chinese new energy brands can capture territory across Europe, Beijing can boast to its domestic audience, look, not only have we not been contained by the West, we are actually conquering Europe in advanced manufacturing. This is a trade achievement, a propaganda achievement, and a face-saving project all at once. That is why BYD is not merely a car. It is an iron fist, lifted by state narrative and hurled toward Europe. Now Orbán has fallen, and this fist may not break immediately. Magyar has not said that all Chinese investment must be driven out. His latest position is that cooperation is possible, but it must comply with Hungarian and EU rules. But what BYD has truly lost is not a business license. It has lost a political talisman. From now on, what it faces will no longer be an Orbán who kept singing against Brussels on Beijing's behalf, but a new government that wants to return to the EU mainstream, recover frozen EU funds, and strengthen transparency and anti-corruption. This change does not necessarily mean that BYD will be liquidated overnight. But it does mean that it must shift from a political shelter model to a rules-based survival model. And for Chinese capital, which has grown accustomed to expanding rapidly through gray zones, policy loopholes, and political channels, that in itself is a major blow. One point must be made very clearly here, whether it is the CCP or all kinds of Chinese enterprises, when they deal with the outside world, they have never had any real sense of rules. They have always ignored rules, and they have never genuinely wanted to follow them. If they can muddle through, they will muddle through. If they can deceive, they will deceive. Some may say you are smearing China. Really? Then let me ask in return, the WTO rules China signed were written in black and white, and known to the whole global village. How much of them has Beijing actually honored? If it can treat such solemn commitments with such casual contempt, what is there that the CCP would not dare to do? So, back to the original question, was BYD's bet on Orbán merely political short-sightedness, or was it collusion with evil? My answer is, both. It is both short-sighted and evil. Its short-sightedness lies in misjudging the times, misjudging Europe, misjudging public opinion, and misjudging the lifespan of a political proxy. Its evil lies in the fact that, fully aware of what kind of figure Orbán was, it still chose to hide under his power and serve as the industrial vanguard of the CCP's new energy iron fist entering Europe. Its evil also lies in the fact that, knowing perfectly well that Orbán and the CCP are cut from the same cloth practicing centralization, intimidation, and media closure, it still gladly boarded the pirate ship, echoed him from within and without, covered for him, and treated EU rules like a dirty rag. Orbán's downfall may not cause BYD to collapse in Europe overnight, but at the very least, the road ahead will become much harder. At the very least, that old game ignoring EU rules while doing business and colluding with Orbán at the same time has come to an end.